Welcome to the Aggie Effect Podcast, presented by the North Carolina A&T State University Aggie Athletic Foundation. This is where Aggie pride, athletic excellence, and lasting impact come together. Each episode brings you closer to the student athletes, coaches, alumni, supporters, and leaders who are helping shape the future of Aggie athletics. Through their stories, we celebrate the tradition, perseverance, and excellence that define North Carolina A&T and explore how the support of Aggie Nation creates opportunities for our student athletes to succeed in competition, in the classroom, and throughout life. Today, we are honored to welcome Frank McCain Jr., Chairman of the Aggie Athletic Foundation, for a conversation about leadership, service, philanthropy, and the vision for advancing Aggie athletics. This is more than a podcast. It is a celebration of excellence, impact, and legacy. Welcome to the Aggie Effect Podcast. Aggie Pride.
Frank, thank you for joining us. As alumnus of North Carolina A&T State University, what does it mean to you personally now serve as the chairman of the Aggie Athletic Foundation board?
I would say it is indeed a pleasure. It's an honor. But more importantly, I see it as a responsibility that I just don't take lightly. A&T, the great North Carolina A&T, helped shape who I am. And serving as the chairman of the Aggie Athletic Foundation allows me to give back to an institution that has given so much to me, family, and our community, and actually, quite frankly, this nation. And so I take this role very, very seriously. I do not take it for granted that people have entrusted me and believe in my ability to lead the Athletic Foundation. And when you think about athletics at any school is probably one of the most visual expressions of a university. And so when we shout Aggie pride needs to be amplified through our athletics. And we need to make sure that we do all we can to support athletics and our student athletes, our coaches, and all of the athletic programs that we have at A&T.
Frank, you and I were in school together. Now, this next question I have for you, how did your experience at A&T shape your leadership philosophy and your commitment to serve?
Well, I tell people all the time, A&T is an interesting place. We got a great education. No ifs, ands, and buts about that. But we also learned valuable lesson that I figured that I've seen that other people didn't learn at some of their institutions. And that valuable lesson was how to survive, how to make something out of nothing, how to look at things in different ways and create it and mold it and make it into something great. So, so when I think about leadership, I lead a team now, and it's about how I position things and how we talk about our purpose. And so A&T instilled in me a sense of discipline. It enhanced my level of confidence. And it actually made me think about my responsibility to serve in a way that just wasn't about, my parents growing up, my parents would always tell me and my brothers, the world is bigger than you. And the world isn't just about you. No one on this earth is going to love you more than your mom and daddy. Trust and believe that. But when you get out here in this world, it can gobble you up and spit you out. But you have to realize that the world is bigger than you, and what can you do to make a difference? So at A&T, we learned that excellence is expected, but service is required. And so that has stayed with me throughout my professional and personal life since the day I left A&T in 1987.
And when you reflect back on your professional journey from A&T, as you talked about, to leading the United Way of Greater Greensboro, what lesson from your ag experience still guides you today?
I would say that preparation, being prepared, perseverant, having the ability to stay strong and focus during times of adversity and controversy. And it's around this thing called community. He taught me to be prepared when opportunity comes and to keep moving forward when challenges arise. And many of them have arisen in my life. That's for sure. But it also told me to never, I don't care how high you rise, what level of achievements you attain, that you should never forget to. I remember something that my father used to say, and he used to say that when you meet a man and he tells you that he got to where he is all by himself, he says you need to run as far as you can and you cannot trust him. And that man is very confused. And it took me, I think, a few years to realize what the message he was trying to get across. And what he was basically saying is that none of us have achieved anything in our life without the help of someone.
Really?
You know, I mean, if it was no one else other than your fourth grade teacher, you know, maybe it was your pastor, maybe it was your neighbor, but nobody can achieve anything alone. And that's what was so great about A&T. You know, A&T, during the time we were there especially, was we didn't do anything alone. You know, we relied on one another for a lot of different things. We relied on each other for courage and encouragement. We relied on each other for support, you know, mental support, you know, motivation, you know, so, you know, I work now, you know, in the nonprofit world, and nonprofit leadership, you know, is very similar to what I think happens in the world of athletics. You have to have values, you have to have goals, and if you keep those values, you know, central to what you're doing and how you lead, then your chances for success probably will greatly improve.
That's a powerful statement. And we talk about your father. A lot of our younger listeners may not know who your father is, Franklin McCain Sr., one of the A&T Four who changed the course of American history at the Woolworth lunch count. How does carrying legacy influence how you approach leadership?
You know, I tell people all the time, you know, to me, daddy was just daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized later in life is, you know, maybe my daddy did have something that was special, that was unique about him. And obviously he had courage beyond measure to sit down at what he called a dumb old stool at the age of 17, on February 1st, 1960, and decide that, you know, that he wanted to do something that was going to make a difference, not just for him, but for his children and his children's children. And so that kind of carried over, I think, into adulthood for him and fatherhood. And he and my mother, who was a Bennett graduate, you know, really instilled in us that, you know, for example, my father was never impressed by us coming home and saying what we had achieved individually. He always wanted to know, what did you do to make it better for someone else? And that's what he would be impressed about. He was never really impressed about individual achievements. As a matter of fact, I remember graduating from high school and I came home and said, hey, I want to have a graduation. I want to have a big party and celebration. And my dad said, what do you celebrate? I said, I'm graduating from high school. He said, well, son, you're supposed to graduate from high school. What else are you going to do? Come back to me when you really have done something. You know, but you've done, what you're talking about is something that you were expected to do. And so, you know, I never really forgot that. And so I've lived my life, you know, with expectations that I set for myself based on the principles that my father and mother placed in us, you know, as young boys. And so, and I've done the same with my own children. You know, my father's legacy was his legacy. Franklin McCain Jr. has to create his own legacy. My son, Mac, had to create his legacy. My daughter, Taylor, she needs to create her own legacy. My wife, Vicky, we all have our own path. It's important for us to do some soul searching, figure out where our strengths are, where our interests are, where we can have the greatest impact. And you're fortunate. It might not be the straight path, but if you take that winding road, but if you stay on that road and you stay focused, you eventually find where you can have the greatest impact. And I feel that I am at that place in my life. And I am thankful for that. Because what I know is that every day when I close my eyes, if it's the last close my eyes, I know that I left this place that I live in a much better place than it was.
Yeah, Frank, that's strong. One of the legacies that I think your father left was his demonstration of courage and discipline.
Yeah.
Those values that also define championship athletics. How do you see those same principles showing in Aggie Athletics?
I think those values show up every day. Courage is, I think, seen when our student athletes compete at a high level while being able to balance their academics and their personal growth. I mean, we, with the Aggie Athletic Foundation, we are interested in total student athlete. We want to support them on and off the field. So, unity, I think, is how teams come together, how alumni rally behind them, and how the Aggie family supports one another. So discipline is, I think, seen in the daily work that happens long before game day. Game day is the end result of many years of preparation, many years of sacrifice, many years of remaining focused. And so what we get to see as fans on game day is our, what I'll call, I love this, what I'll call blood, sweat, and tears. So championship programs are built on those same principles. In order to be a champion, you have to be willing to set yourself apart. You have to be willing to do things that are not so great to do or not so well received maybe by the general public. But that's what sets you apart. That's how you become a champion.
Absolutely.
And so that's who we are at A&T. That's who many of our student athletes.
And along with building championship comes responsibility. Today's Aggies, the athletes, the alumni, the supporters, have continued the legacy of excellence. So how do you think we need to continue that aspect of responsibility, right?
Oh, let's see. I'm going to take the easy road here. Now, next, and beyond. Probably have heard that from the lips of our new chancellor, Chancellor Martin. It makes sense. And what does that mean maybe for athletics? I think what it means is, our history is powerful, but we know that our history alone is not enough. We need to honor the legacy, but we also need to build on it. And I think we build on it by supporting our students, investing in programs that support them, and showing up for our university and making sure that the next generation of Aggies have even greater opportunities than we had. And we have the same responsibility to the generation.
Yeah, that's powerful because I can live off some of the history when I play football. But
that's the past.
I'm excited for the future. Our chancellor is excited for the future of our school. And as a chairman, what is your long-term vision for Aggie Athletic Foundation and its role in supporting students both on and off the field, Frank?
Yeah, so I believe in alignment. I believe transparency. I believe in open communication. I believe in being a strategist and having a long-term vision. And so when I think about A&T Athletics, I think about how can we best align with the overall vision of the greater body, which would be A&T. My long-term vision, I think, for the foundation is for us to become stronger, more visible, and be a phenomenal strategic partner in the success of A&T Athletics, but also in the success of A. And what does that mean? That means that we need to continue to work on increasing and improving donor engagement. We need to work on creating sustainable funding streams to support athletics. We need to work holistically on our student athletes. Let's work on their total being, their overall development. And then, I think we want to help position our athletic programs to be able to compete at the highest of levels, not just winning our conference, but how do we elevate A&T Athletic to a level beyond anything that we have ever seen or could have possibly imagined? A&T is a school of many firsts.
Absolutely.
I want us to be the first, elevated the very highest. Why can't we win a national championship? Why can't we win numerous national championships? Why can't we be looked upon like schools, like great, the great Alabama and the Georgia,
Tennessee,
the Tennessee? Why can't A&T be in the mix? Well, truth to the matter is that we can. And so when we support the whole student, support them academically, athletically, personally, and professionally, I think then as an organization, the Aggie Athletic Foundation would.
Frank, it's very important that you said that, because when you really look at it, some of our programs have competed at the national level.
Mm-hmm.
You look at track program, our bowling program.
Right.
And our new chancellor has that same philosophy for our university. So I think our athletic vision and our university vision are aligned. How do you see AF balancing tradition with innovation as college athletics continue to evolve through NILs, media exposure, and conference realignment?
I said earlier, I talked about how we have to or need to honor our tradition, but we also have to be honest the world that we're competing in today. College athletics is changing rapidly. I mean, it is changing daily almost. And, with the NIL, with media exposure, teams shifting conferences like we've done.
Absolutely.
And just the new financial realities of athletics, period. And so AAF, we have to be forward thinking. We can't just think about tomorrow or the next day. We have to really think about how do we position ourselves 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And that requires us to be flexible, and it requires us to be strategic. And so, I don't think that innovation should ever cause us to lose sight on who we are. So we don't need to lose our identity. I think we need to take our identity and turn it into a positive, something that separates us, that differentiates us in this world of athletics. It's something that A&T has that you can't get anywhere else.
Absolutely.
How do we communicate it? How do we market that? How do we build upon it?
That Aggie spirit. Mm-hmm.
So our tradition, I think, is our foundation, and innovation is how we build on it.
Nice, Frank. And that leads to another question. What does winning mean to you in the context of Aggie Athletic beyond the scoreboard? Now, your son, Mac, played for A&T during the Broadway years, and we had some exciting times there, Frank, you know what I mean?
Yes, we do.
We went on the field, Celebration Bowls. But for some of these athletes, what does winning mean after athletic?
Yeah, winning is bigger than the final score of the game when I think about athletes. There's a small percentage of athletes anywhere that upon graduation from college get to go to the next level. A very small percent. So what does that mean? That means that we have to make sure that our students are graduating and they are prepared for the workforce. And so as they're training on the fields, on the court, in the bowling alley, wherever their athletic skill set takes them, we want them to leave and be leaders and be role models that represent our university in the best. I recall being, I think it was the end of my sophomore year, I was interning and that company had one other minority, a black male who was in leadership. They were sending through their leadership program. And people who worked there, guess they thought I was born last night, but I was born at night, but not last night. And so they would ask me questions like, tell me, do you know anything about XYZ school? And I'm like, well, yeah, what do you mean? Well, they have a high SAT score to get in, and they just graduate you to be graduating well. I knew what that meant. What that meant is that they were questioning the level of academic rigor that happened at that school. And what it told me is that this person that they were referencing must not be performing at a level that they found satisfying. And it was at that moment that this light bulb went off in my head. And I said to myself, you know what? I've got to be my best here. Because what I want them to do when I leave is I want them to say, whoa, maybe I didn't know about North Carolina A&T. But this young man has come in and he's bright. He works hard. He's focused. And he's a winner. And we want to go back to that school and get some more people like him. And that's what we want our athletes to be able to do. We want them to be able to represent the university with excellence and integrity. That means creating pride, among our alumni, that exist out here. Because I tell people all the time, when you, especially in corporate America or any job, you are representing yourself, but you're also representing your ancestors. You're representing the folks from your university, that come behind you. And what you want to do is always position yourself in a way that employers want to come back and get more people like. So championships matter. They really do. But I think the ultimate victory is preparing our young people to win long after their playing days are over at A&T.
And Frank, that's a podcast in itself. Many athletes that graduated from North Carolina A&T that have gone on to do phenomenal things. And I think we need to interview some of these former athletes and get their perspective on what they went through. For these young athletes know they can do it.
That's exactly right.
And oftentimes we don't see.
Nope.
And we need to see that more. So we talked about leadership. We talked about transparency and governance, Frank. Now you lead one of the region's most impactful nonprofit organizations. What best practice from the United Way leadership are you bringing into your role?
See, I would say probably one of the most important lessons from nonprofit leadership is that impact requires a lot. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that you need to always be very clear about your mission. You need to build strong relationships. We need to have measurable goals. And we need to be consistent in our communication and aligned in our. And that's a winning combination. So, yes, I currently serve as the president and CEO of the United Way. And, collaboration is essential to our success. And I think that same thing holds true for AAF. We have to collaborate both internally and externally. And we have been working very hard with the new administration to be aligned, to figure out where those points of alignment are and to be good partners with them as we both try to achieve our goal. And so, it's really about, how do you bring people together around a shared vision, And I think once you successfully are able to do that, then you will find that it's at that point where you can really make a real difference and you can have the impact that you need.
Collaboration between the alumni, well, this is a very important thing, the alumni, the donors, the coaches, and as you mentioned, the university leadership, how important in strengthening Aggie Athletics. I mean, you kind of talk about it a little bit more, but donors and the coaches, and some of the alumni, sometimes they feel left out, Frank?
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. I mean, I would say, part of, for example, Aggie Athletic Foundation has, All Aggies All In campaign going on, being chaired by Willie Deese of 1977. All Aggies All In, I think, says it all. You get in where you fit in, regardless of where you are. There's a place for you to support athletics at A&T. And some people do it one way, some people do it another way, but doing it anyway is the right way. So collaboration is absolutely essential. No one group, no one individual can do anything alone. So we need our alumni, we need our donors, our coaches, our university leadership, our students. We need the broader Aggie community. We need all of them to know that they have a role to play. And if they can't figure out what their role is, then we have a responsibility to help them figure out what it is. And so, again, when we are aligned, we can really do extraordinary things. The strength of Aggie Athletics, I think, will depend on our ability to work together, communicate clearly and often, I'm finding, and stay focused on what is best for our student athletes and the university. If you keep the mission first, then everything else will fall in line.
That's perfectly said, Frank. When you look at our alumni, donor, and the Aggie family in general, for alumni who may feel disconnected or unsure of how to engage, what message would you like to share about the importance of supporting?
I would say that...
Because I remember you and I had a conversation. I talked about some corporate, and we gave a significant donation to A&T, and I didn't get a thank you.
I remember the conversation.
He said something to me. He said, when your wife does something, do you just stop talking to her?
Go.
Let it go.
You gotta let it go. You really do. And that is a lot of what I've heard and what I hear, from alum. There was something that went wrong when they were a student, or something has gone wrong since then. And we know about how things can go wrong. We've seen it. We live the Aggie Shuffle. We survived, but I would say that we're better than we were, and we have to figure out how to continue to get better. And so part of I made as my mission when I became the chair is I wanted to make sure that people knew that they could talk.
That's true.
I want to hear you. I really want to hear you and understand what your position is. Because if I can't hear you and if I don't listen to you, then there's no way that we can repair or correct whatever the issue. And so some things we've been able to address. For example, people talked about, not being communicated with, not knowing what's going on. And thanks to you and a few other people, Duke Meekins and Aaron, you folks built a new website for us. A website that highlights much of the work that we're doing with AAF, but it's also a repository for information that's, about what's going on in athletics. So, if you've got a question, if you thought you saw an email or someone told you about something going on, you likely can go to our website now and find the information about what's going on in athletics. That's opening the door, strengthening communications, making it easy for people. That's the other thing. You can't, in this business we're in, with AAF, where we are the primary fundraisers for athletics, we can't make giving to A&T hard. We got to make it easy for you. So just because the only way we used to be able to accept donations was you had to write us a check or you had to fill out this paper and submit it with your check. Well, still, but all these other platforms that exist, we've got to keep up with the time. If you want to scan a QR code and make a quick donation, or you want to send something cash out, we need to be in a position where we can accept that.
And recognize a person for the donation.
That's right, and recognize and thank them. So we have been working intentionally on things like that. So we have identified 6 priority areas within the AAF that we want to make our focus over the next 12 to 18 months. And those things, if we are able to achieve them, I think you will continue to see a noticeable difference in the work that AAF is doing. I think if you're better informed, then you'll want to be engaged. And I think you'll be able to find a place where you can be. So we have a responsibility as leaders to make it easy for you, but we also have to educate you on the front end. So we have to educate you, we have to make it easy for you, and then we have to invite you and welcome you to be part of the process.
And this website, Frank, is just the first stage of this whole communication strategy that this podcast was part of it.
Yes.
And as we develop the website more, our alumni base will be very pleased with it. How can donors be confident that their contributions are making a meaningful, major difference in the lives of our students?
I think, if you look at our aggregate grade point average for our student athlete, if you look at our graduation rate for our student athlete, and then lastly, if you look at the success that our student athletes are having on and off their places, their points of athletic activity, on the field, off the field, on the court, whatever. I think if you look at that doesn't happen in isolation. That happens as a result of coordinated effort to position our athletic program and our athletes for success. I will tell you, I was talking to someone the other day, and I gave them an example. And so if you follow college basketball, for example, last year for the NCAA tournament, there was a team that I would say most of the United States had never heard of. But they became a team that, if you were watching a tournament, became an instant favorite of yours and you wanted them to win. Mm-hmm. And that was a team that came from a place that when I was a student was known as High Point College. Mm-hmm. But now it's known as High Point University. But Point University has done what I've described. They set a goal, they had a vision, they put a plan together, a long-term plan, long-range plan, and now they're implementing on it.
Yeah,
and it is paying off.
Yes.
For them to have a basketball team that can go and win 3 consecutive games in the NCAA tournament. I mean, that was unheard. That was unheard of years ago.
Absolutely.
But they knew that they wanted to elevate their school on a national level.
The window to the university is that.
Through athletics. And I can assure you that they are, as a result of people seeing, and if they go over there and visit, quite frankly, they're going to want to post up and not even go back to their hometown. Because that's a marvelous place over there. So you know, A&T can do that. We have the bandwidth to do it. We have the alums with brilliant minds, deep pockets, shallow pockets. We have shallow pockets, but great ideas and willing to roll up your sleeve. But it takes everybody all to the table with whatever strength.
Absolutely.
And collectively, we can create an athletic program like none other, especially none other that's been seen within the realms of a HBCU for sure.
That same feeling that we had when we were winning celebration.
Right. That's exactly right.
Our application, this jump, pride came to the university. So what excites you the most about our current generation of Aggie alum and supporters?
You know, I have found that our young people are very, very smart.
Yes, they are.
They are. I mean, they've got brilliant. Now, they're a little different than what we were, it appears to me anyway. From my observation, I don't see them being as connected with one another as we were when we were students at A&T, for example. And what do I mean? I sometimes will go on campus just to reflect. Sometimes I go to the statue and just sort of reflect, or I go over by what we used to call the student union, but now they call it the student center. But what I also do is I'm very observant, and I have sat and I've watched walk up and down the sidewalk with their phones in their hand, just so engulfed in whatever that is on their screen, and walk right past each other. There's no hello, there's no communication. If it's not on that phone, you know, it just doesn't exist. And so what I'm hopeful for is that they will grow out. Because, you know, again, I talked about how important relationships are. And there are times there are going to be times in their lives where they're going to need some support. They're going to need to be able to lean on someone for advice. You know, there are going to be challenges in their life professionally and personally. And who wants to walk through life alone? I mean, that's got to be that's got to be a hard road. And so I want them to change that. And I think if they couple that with the brilliance that then I think the potential is unlimited.
You know, Frank, I had that similar conversation just about an hour ago. You know, your parents went to college, my parents went to college, grandparents went to college, and you were class. And the way that parents communicated and fun was different from the way we have.
Yes.
I think different. This generation communicates and sees things. Mm-hmm. But I firmly believe going to HBCU, that interpersonal skills will come out faster.
Yeah.
That the homecoming,
yes.
You can't walk around homecoming just for
No. Yeah. There's too many other things to look at. You might miss something.
You might miss something. So, I mean, what I'm saying is, I agree with you 100%. I look at my daughters, how they, and somebody's running for office, all these speeches. And when my daughter was a freshman, she said, well, so-and-so's going to win. I said, how you know she's going to win? School hasn't started.
Right.
And she's already been on Instagram. She's been advertising and talking to speech on Instagram. Totally different from where we go to the tree of knowledge.
Exactly. The tree of knowledge.
The union.
The union.
You know,
and I just hope that they will grow out of that. I mean, they are really victims of this current environment, to be honest with you. But I just want them to wake up. And then the other thing is, and I have to say this, going to A&T has always been a privilege, but it's even a larger privilege now.
Absolutely.
Because I tell people all the time that if I had to apply for A&T now and had the grades and SAT score that I had when I graduated high school, they weren't bad, but I probably wouldn't get in.
Absolutely.
I probably wouldn't get in. And so I want the students to know that you are walking on sacred ground.
Absolutely.
And people who have walked there before you created a way for you. And now you have a responsibility to create a way for the next generation. And in order to do that, you have to use everything that you have. Well, this social media world that we live in, how can this next generation help build platforms or support platforms that support A&T Athletics or A&T? What's next and beyond in that field?
Absolutely.
We now offer a degree in AI, artificial intelligence. How do those folks who are majoring in artificial intelligence, how do they take it and use it to the betterment of A&T?
But we have the innovation center.
Yes, innovation. Yeah, how do you do that? You've got things at your fingertip we didn't have. Absolutely. I mean, we were in school, people were still using phones at the end of the hallway.
Cars, AT&T. We're innovative.
Yeah, very innovative. Very innovative.
Absolutely.
That's the truth.
So, Frank, looking ahead, when your tenure as chairman is complete, what legacy do you hope to leave at the A&T Athletic Foundation?
I always just, with anything I do, I always want to leave it better than I want to have created new pipelines or diversified our revenue stream. I want to have engaged more alums and non-alums who support A&T. And that's important. One of the focus I told you about, the 6 priorities, one of them is how do we engage folks who yell Aggie pride, but maybe never went to A&T a day in their life? How do we engage them? How do we get them involved? Because we want them involved. They love us, and we need to love them back. So I want to make sure we are engaging people who want to be involved. Let's help people find their place. I want to make sure that we have, improve our infrastructure. We now have only 2 people who work full-time at Aggie Athletic Foundation. And so can you imagine what that's like when you got thousands of alums that are emailing you, calling you, become quite overwhelmed. So how do we create an environment where we have additional support, employee support at the university around athletic foundation, around athletics? We need to work on the infrastructure.
And Frank, that's one of the things as chairman that you did that really helped me in building this website, where you told us to engage other people.
That's exactly.
And from that, we had some bright young minds to really have the same passion and enthusiasm that we had to really assist and really lead in building this website.
That's exactly right.
And Parent has been an absolute godsend by reaching. And we have, other people, Gerald Johnson, who's getting engaged on the AI end of the website. So, doing that for the administrative side.
That's exactly right.
If you're a retired person that just want to do some work in the office, we can really use that. Right?
That's right.
So what advice would you give a young Aggie, especially a student, who aspire to lead purpose, integrity, and impact?
Yes. I don't know if I would give advice as much as I try to model the behavior that I think will lend itself to them being successful. And so, do what you say and, say what you're going to do and do what you say. Be a visionary. Think outside of the box. Just because we've never done it before doesn't mean that it can't be. Just because somebody else down the street is doing something one way, that's the way you. Maybe you take their model and you shape it in a way that it fits the A&T culture, the A&T environment. We need not lose ourselves through all of this, And so when you mentioned earlier, when I talked to you about my desire to build on our website, to improve our website. The other thing mentioned to you, I don't know if you remember, is I said, hey, I don't want to micromanage this process. Quite frankly, this is not my will. Go out there and you think about what this could be and involve some folks that from different generations. Bring everybody's perspective to them. And so when you talk about people like Aaron Oliphant, who you found, who raised his hand and said, I want to be engaged.
Actually, Duke Meekins.
And then Duke Meekins, okay, that's right. Yeah. So, but that's really 3 different generations who came together when you think.
Exactly right.
That came together and said, let's put our minds together and what could this look like? I'm really big on mentorship. And so imagine how this relationship is positioned in the mind of someone like Aaron. He's our next generation of leaders. And so what I would hope is that through this process, that not only did we create something that was great, not only did you create something that was great, but you also did what we tried to do, or we have a responsibility to do as Aggie alums and AAF, and that is to be mentors for that next generation. They are paying attention to what we do. And so what they see is our level of commitment to our university. And, our financial commitment, our volunteerism, our participation, showing up. They see that. And if they see it being done like I saw it being done, then I feel just automatically, what else am I to do other than to continue the tradition and maybe even try to improve upon it? And so, so when you think of legacy, I think the greatest legacy and the greatest reward is to have created a pipeline of Aggie supporters who will come behind you and build on what you've done. So if we can do that, then I think, would have reached the highest level of achievement possible.
And I think that can be achieved, too, by engaging some of the departments on university campus.
Right.
Department of journalism, the engineering department, and these young kids. The marketing department.
Engineering department, computer science, everyone.
Exactly.
There's a place for everyone, And we have enough work to do.
Absolutely.
We got so much work to do. We'll find a place.
Absolutely.
Let's find a place. If a student showed up tomorrow and says, I want to be engaged with Aggie Athletic Foundation, and they tell me that they're what's one of those new engineer majors I just heard somebody talk about the other day. I'm saying, I don't even know what it is, but we'll figure out where your place is. We'll figure out where you can contribute.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, we'll figure it out.
So finally, Frank, what gives you the greatest hope for the future of North Carolina A&T Aggie Athletics?
I think what gives me the greatest hope is that even though I get to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, I would say that 85 or 90% of it is the good. And what I mean by that is that generally just love. A&T means so much to so many because it was at that place that people discovered who they were. They were encouraged to be best that they could be. They formed everlasting relationships, friendships with their classmates. And so I just believe that, when it's all said and done, that everyone wants us to be successful. Everybody likes to be part of a winning team. And we're winners already, but we can be champions. Aggies deserve to be champions.
So, Chairman McCain, if one call to action, I want to give every Aggie listener today, what would it be, Frank?
I would say educate yourself. Educate yourself on athletics. What's going on in the market. It is very different than what it was even a year or two. And so we're doing our very best through the website to try to educate folks about what's going on in athletics. Use our website as a place of resource, but also do some reading, from general publications about what's going on in athletics. Study athletics at other schools. Again, open your mind and say, what if? What can be? What should? What's possible? And I think that we have unlimited possibilities. So I would just say, find your place, find where you can contribute. But I think if you educate yourself, you will find that you'll figure out where you can make it. And for some people, it's simply just making a donation. Maybe that's all that you have the capacity to do.
It could be some people, they might want to volunteer.
You might want to volunteer. I mean, but just get in where you fit in. Get in and bring somebody along with you. Bring someone along with you. And I think if we do that, then we continue to be the great university. All in very at the level of success that achieved.
Well, Chairman McCain, I want to thank you for this first Aggie Effect podcast. Before we go, I want to ask you for a favor. What is the possibility to interview both you and Willie Dees?
You know what? I think you got a great chance because Willie and I have spoken, and we would like to do a podcast.
That's great.
So he is on board 100%. I mean, you're talking about somebody to raise some money to support A&T. That's the man. So so we'll love to do it.
Absolutely.
So let's work on it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening to the Aggie Effect Podcast. My name is Terrence Williams, and today we have Chairman Franklin McCain, Aggie Athletic Foundation. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Aggie Effect Podcast, presented by the North Carolina A&T State University Aggie Athletic Foundation. We hope today's conversation inspired you, informed you, and reminded you of the lasting impact we can make when Aggie Nation comes together in support of our student athletes. To learn more about the Aggie Athletic Foundation, support Aggie Athletics, or stay connected with future episodes, visit aggieaf.org and follow us on social media. Your support helps create opportunities for our student athletes to excel in competition, succeed in the classroom, and prepare for lives of leadership and service. Until next time, continue to represent excellence, strengthen our legacy, and make an impact. This has been the Aggie Effect Podcast. Aggie Pride.